Hello, short one today. Starting at page 344. Talking about, I'll go back a sentence. One sec. Since she knew a little harmony and even some Greek, she was especially enlightened. She despised Chopin and suffered when she heard it played. But far away from the surveillance of that Wagnerian, who was often in the distance with a group of people her own age, Madame de Compremure abandoned herself to her delightful impressions. The Princess de Lens was enjoying them too. Though without a natural gift for music, she had had lessons 15 years earlier from a piano teacher of the Faubourg Saint-Germain, a woman of genius who at the end of her life had been reduced to poverty and had returned at the age of 70 to giving piano lessons to the daughters and granddaughters of her old pupils. She was dead now, but her method, her lovely sound, came back to life sometimes under the fingers of her pupils, even those who had become in other respects ordinary people, had abandoned music, and almost never opened a piano anymore. And so Madame de Lens could shake her head with expert knowledge, with a just appreciation of the way the pianist was playing this prelude, which she knew by heart. The end of the phrase he had begun already sang on her lips. As she murmured, "It's always charming," with a double ch at the start of the word, which was a mark of refinement, and which she felt pursed her lips so romantically like a beautiful flower that she instinctively brought her eyes into harmony with them by giving them an expression just then of sentimentality and vague yearning. Meanwhile, Madame du Gallardon was saying to herself how annoying it was that she only very rarely had the opportunity to meet the Princess de Lens, for she wanted to teach her a lesson by not responding to her greeting. She did not know her cousin was there. A movement of Madame de Francoteu's head revealed the princess to her. Immediately she hurried towards her, disturbing everyone, but though she wanted to preserve a haughty and glacial manner which would remind everyone that she did not wish to be on friendly terms with a person in whose house one might find oneself coming face to face with Princess Mathilde, and to whom it was not for her to make advances, since she was not of her generation. She still wanted to offset the air of haughtiness and reserve by some remark that would justify her overture and force the princess to engage in conversation. And so, when she came near her cousin, Madame du Gallardon, with a hard expression and a hand outthrust like a forced card, said to her, "How is your husband?" in the concerned tone she would have used if the prince had been gravely ill, the princess bursting into a laugh which was peculiar to her and which was intended at once to show to others that she was making fun of someone, and also to make herself look prettier by concentrating her features around her animated lips and sparkling eyes, answered, "Why, he's never been better." And she laughed again, whereupon Madame du Gallardon, drawing herself up and contriving an even chillier expression, yet still concerned about the prince's condition, said to her cousin, "Orion." Here Madame du Lens looked with an air of surprise and merriment at an invisible third party in whose presence she seemed anxious to attest that she had never authorized Madame de Gallardon to call her by her first name. "I would be so pleased if you could stop at my house for a moment tomorrow evening to hear a clarinet quintet by Mozart. I would like to have your opinion." She seemed not to be offering an invitation, but to be asking a favor, and to need the princess's assessment of the Mozart quintet, as if it were a dish composed by a new cook, about whose talents it was valuable to her to obtain the opinion of a gourmet. "But I know that quintet, I can tell you right now. I like it. You know my husband isn't well, it's his liver. It would give him great pleasure to see you," resumed Madame du Gallardon, now placing the princess under a charitable obligation to appear at her soirée. The princess never liked to tell people she did not want to go to their homes. Every day she would write notes expressing her regrets at having been prevented by an unexpected visit from her mother-in-law, an invitation from her brother-in-law, the opera, an expedition to the country, from attending a soiree which she never would have dreamed of going to. In this way, she gave many people the joy of believing that she was one of their friends, that she would readily have gone to visit them, that she had just been kept from doing so only by princely inconveniences, which they were flattered to see enter into a competition with their soiree. Then, too, since she was part of that witty circle of gourmands in which something survived of the alert mentality unburdened by platitudes and conventional feelings, which was handed down from Merimie, and had found its latest expression in the theatre of Milhac and Halave, she adapted it even to social relations, transposed it into even her politeness, which endeavored to be positive and precise and to approximate the plain truth. She would never develop at any length to a hostess the expression of her desire to be present at her party. She thought it friendlier to put to her a few little facts on which it could depend, and whether or not it was possible for her to come. The thing is, she said to Madame du Gallardon, tomorrow evening I have to go see a friend who has been asking me to take a date with her for ages. If she takes us to the theater, even with the best will in the world, there won't be any chance of me coming to you. But if we stay in the house, since I know we'll be alone, I'll be able to leave her. Oh, by the way, did you see your friend, Monsieur Swann? Why, no, my beloved Charles. I did not know he was here. I must try to attract his attention. It's funny that he should go to Saint Evert's, said Madame du Gallardon. Oh, I know he's intelligent, she added, meaning he was a schemer. But still and all, a Jew in the home of the sister and sister-in-law of two archbishops. I've completely lost my place. Archbishops. I confess to all my shame that I'm not shocked, said the Princess de Lens. I know he's a convert, and even his parents and grandparents before him, but they do say converts remain more attached to their religion than anyone else. That's all it is. That it's all just a pretense. Is that true? I don't know a thing about that. The pianist, who was to play 2 pieces by Chopin after finishing the prelude, had immediately attacked a polonaise. But now that Madame du Gallardon had told her cousin that Swann was there, Chopin himself might have risen from the dead and played all his pieces in succession without Madame de Lens paying the slightest attention. She belonged to that half of the human race in whom the curiosity the other half feels about all the people it does not know is replaced by the interest in the people it does. As with many women of Faubourg Saint-Germain, the presence in a place where she happened to be of someone from her set, she thought, though she had nothing in particular to say to him, monopolized her attention at the expense of everyone else and everything else. From that moment on, in the hopes that Swann would notice her, the princess, like a tame white mouse, when a bit of sugar is offered to it and then taken away, kept turning her face, which was filled with 1,000 signs of complicity unrelated to the feelings in Chopin's polonaise, in Swann's direction. If he moved, she would shift in a corresponding direction with her magnetic smile. Oriane, don't be angry, resumed Madame du Gallardon, who could never stop herself from sacrificing her greatest social ambitions and highest hope of some day dazzling the world to the immediate, obscure, and private pleasures of saying something disagreeable. But people do claim that Monsieur Swann is someone whom one can't have in one's house. Is that true? Why, you ought to know, answered the Princess de Lens, since you've invited him 50 times and he hasn't come. And leaving her mortified cousin, she burst into laughter again, scandalizing the people who were listening to the music, but attracting the attention of Madame de Saint-Evert, who had stayed near the piano out of politeness, and only now noticed the princess. Madame de Saint-Evert was especially delighted to see Madame de Lens because she had thought she was still at Guermantes, looking after her sick father-in-law. Why, Princess, I didn't know you were here. Why, yes, I tucked myself away in a little corner, and I've been hearing such lovely things. What? You've been here for a long time? Why, yes, a very long time, which seemed very short to me. It was long only because I couldn't see you. Madame de Saint-Euverte tried to give her chair to the princess, who answered, "Oh, please no. Why should you? I'm comfortable wherever I sit." And intentionally selecting the better to display her simplicity, great lady though she was, a low seat without a back. Here, this hassock is all I need. It'll make me sit up straight. Oh, my lord. I'm making too much noise again. If I'm not careful, they'll turn me on and throw me out. They'll turn on me and throw me out. Oof. Meanwhile, the pianist, having redoubled his speed, the musical emotion was at its height. A servant was passing refreshments on a tray and making spoons click, as happened every week. And as happened every week, Madame de Saint-Euverte signaled to him without his seeing her to go away. A newlywed, who had been taught that a young woman must not appear bored, smiled with pleasure and tried to catch the hostess's eye in order to send a look of gratitude for having thought of her for such a treat. However, although she remained calmer than Madame de Franquetot, it was not without some uneasiness that she followed the music, but the object of her uneasiness was not the pianist, but the piano, on which a candle jumping with each fortissimo risked, if not setting its shade on fire, at least spotting the Brazilian rosewood. In the end, she could not bear it any longer, and scaling the 2 steps of the dais on which the piano was placed, swooped down to remove the sconce. But her hands were just about to touch it when, with a final chord, the piece ended and the pianist stood up. Nevertheless, the young woman's bold initiative, the resulting brief promiscuity between her and the instrumentalist, produced a generally favorable impression. "Did you see what that one young woman did, Princess?" said General de Froberville to the Princess de Lorme, whom he had come up to greet, and whom Madame de Saint-Euverte had left for a moment. Odd, wasn't it? Is she a performer? That's where I'm ending. On page 349. Very short.